I was just tagged in in a in a 50. It was International Men's Day yesterday.
Was it?
Yeah, I just logged onto LinkedIn for the first time in a while. It was International Men's Day yesterday, and I was tagged in a 30 men to follow in digital transformation and tech. Like narrow down that domain as narrow, digital transformation in tech in the south of England. Who are wearing white t-shirts? Yeah, I'm definitely 30 men to follow there.
You're one of
But
the
yeah,
30.
I'm one of them. Yeah, but I was just seeing who else is on that list, and it's a bunch of people I don't like.
Ah, that's never good,
Yeah,
is it? Or
it's never good.
maybe
Yeah.
it's a good point for reflection.
Well, it's like the CEO of Amazon, which I thought was a bit weird. I don't think I'm remotely in that same. There's plenty of people. It's not like it's a bunch of CEOs and Asim. It's like the CEO of Amazon is like kind of an outlier in this list. There's a bunch
Right.
of people who are like Asim like.
Maybe they threw him in to see if they could
Actually, oh.
get some more attention.
But yeah, so I'm 30 men to follow, mate. That's what I'm saying. 30 men
Well, I'm
to
following you,
yeah.
so
Well, there you go. It's just
you got one follower.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, there's
yeah.
people I like in this list. There's people I like in this. Oh, there's people I like a lot in this list. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's hundreds of men.
It's hundreds. It's not 30.
That's sneaky. It's 30 men to follow. It is exactly as I just described it. It is 30 men to follow in digital transformation and tech, but it's subdivided into different groups of 30 men. I'm in the. There must be like hundreds of men in this list, but each of them are a separate group of 30. So 30 men to follow in artificial intelligence, 30 men to follow in. I don't even know what I'm in. Anyway,
Wow.
I find
Okay.
these are like marketing things. They're quite useful things. You basically create a post and you tag loads of people in it, and then that's what gives you your promotion because you want to celebrate yourself being 30 men under 30, and so you share it. It's like all those award ceremonies that happen, all those awards things, and it's just like they just invented an award because they know that you will pay
Yeah.
for
And
the
they
dinner
send you an
party.
email saying you've been nominated for an award, and they like some of them they give you something to share right away, like oh, I'm a nominee, and it's like, hang on, who nominated me? You nominated me. You're the person who's running
Yeah,
this running the awards.
we had. I've had it before. We've had teams of Cambridge. I remember the same Cambridge PhD graduates. I remember that sentence thinking, I don't think a Cambridge PhD graduate is like imagine them trolling away. Go, we're looking for 30 men. It wasn't a 30 men under 30. It was something else. It was like who figured out that you're the right nomination for this thing. And I'm supposed to make you think like, oh yeah, PhD graduate. Yeah, it takes a PhD to figure out if I'm it's like it was like this whole thing, and I was like, this whole thing seems engineered.
Yeah.
And it was like £1,000 or something to reserve a table at the award ceremony. I think it was that. It was like £1,000 to. It was a whole business around awards, and it made me realize awards are like a business.
Yeah.
So when you see somebody who says they're award winning, in your head you're like, oh, that's good. But now I think, oh yeah, they paid £1,000 for a
Yeah.
table.
There's very few awards that are just pure merit awards. They're nearly all commercial, and there's nearly always some sort of fee, either an entry fee or some big fee to go to the ceremony, or normally one of those two. Um, but there are some that are.
Have you been awarded? You have, haven't
This is
you?
really
You've been
funny.
awarded loads. Yeah.
Well, this is funny because I've been to a number of places like conferences and so on where people have introduced me as like an award-winning web designer, or I run an award-winning business and things like this. And I we have won some awards over the years, but not like they're kind of so insignificant that I don't even remember what they are. that's so we don't really talk about them because we've always gone down the line of like, well, we don't really want to pay to enter awards like a lot of agencies do. So we've
Yeah.
kind of therefore actually not got that many awards. So when people introduce me, like Tom, he's like this award-winning
Award-winning.
designer who runs this award-winning business. I'm like, which awards are you talking about?
It is interesting, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
there's this sentence called award-winning, and it short circuits your brain.
Yeah. Oh,
It
they're
short
good.
circuits,
They're
like,
really good.
"Oh, they're award-winning, eh?"
Yeah.
And yet you don't know that actually there's an industry of not lying, of yes, I call it a lie. I don't know if I call it like it's not really like a true. There's like an industry around there, and it just short circuits your brain, like these days. And I know you're a published author, but like published author is another. They're a published author, and I'm like, I can do that in 2.5 seconds, mate. It's a couple of command line tools, and
A couple of command lines.
command line tools, and
But then you're not a published author. You are the
self-published.
You are the ghost, right? You are the pen name of Claude AI.
Yeah. Well, these days now that you can say that these days, but no, you can self-publish and say so. When I had my some very small web agency, I had one of my clients was a gentleman from the US, and he'd published like 3 or 4 books, and I went on to, and he sent me one of his books. I just finished my new book. I'll send it over to you, and he sent it over to me. And I'd never read something. It literally read like he had like verbal diarrhea, whatever thoughts came out into his head, no editing, no nothing, over the course of like a month. He'd wake up every day and he'd just write for an hour, and he just that was it. It was I think the nature was like internship or something around like he was an expert on internship.
Okay.
And then I went to his Amazon page, and he had like 3 or 4 books of the same kind of ilk, and every book had like #1 best-selling printed on the top like third of the book.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're not. You just printed it on the top of your book. So now when he's going around everywhere, he's got these 3 books that have got #1 best-selling at the top. So he's a best-selling published author, and he managed to get on Shark Tank. That was one of our deals. I was helping with his Shark Tank.
Does he listen to this podcast?
No, it's been a long time, and he did not pay me the final invoice, which to me, all bets are off once you don't pay the final invoice. Oh my God. Yeah.
You're like, I'm giving that book a 1-star review on Amazon.
Yeah, 1-star review.
Yeah. The funny thing is though, in Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek book.
Yeah.
In that, I remember like years and years ago when it first came out, I read that, and in that he explained how the process of how you get your book to be a bestseller, and that was one of the things he's done with that book, and how basically most people don't understand how the book industry works, and they don't realize that there's loads of bestseller lists, and within the bestseller lists, because you've got like the Times bestseller, New York Times bestseller, the Guardian bestseller, Amazon bestseller, you've got all these different lists, and then within those lists you have sub lists, a bit like your 30 men to follow, right? You have sub lists of like genres, and so the trick is to find like a publisher, but not a publisher, but like an organization that has bestseller lists and a genre within their lists that is like really quite niche and that doesn't have a lot of like mainstream competition from like big name authors. And then the way that most of them count bestsellers is literally like sales in a month. So if you order yourself like 1,000 copies of your book in December, in this niche genre, or maybe more than 1,000, whatever, but you figure out what the number is, then you basically end up on the bestseller list. And you might have just bought those copies so that you can like distribute them or resell them or whatever.
You probably already had like a bookstore who wanted it, but you just
Yeah,
do it.
exactly.
But
You
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
run it through yourself so that you get that
yeah.
number of sales in 1 month, and you get on the list, and then you can put it on the top of your book cover,
Number one. Yeah,
forever.
yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
you can put it on for because for like 1 month you were the bestseller in
exactly.
niche. Well, there was another trick in Amazon publishing, especially when you're self-publishing, in that you can pick the category that it goes into. You can, so occasionally you will find like a tech technical book, but it's under like medieval cooking category.
Medieval cooking.
Or something. There's just
Ah,
some. I'm sure you can't do it that far away, but you can pick even in tech. You can pick like a really niche bit of
yeah,
tech,
yeah,
and then when you go on Amazon, you can just filter it, so it'll show you like a list of books, and it'll literally have the number one next to yours on the top, and that's another trick. There's all these tricks of the world
yeah,
to yeah. It's not as you see. Yeah,
yeah. Next year when I
yeah.
publish the book I've been writing this year, I will I'll have to decide whether I'm going to try and game the bestseller lists or not.
Well, you probably have quite a few categories you could choose. There's probably
Yeah,
a
it's
wide
quite
range
a
of categories.
diverse
Yeah,
book. I could
yeah,
legitimately put it
yeah,
in some quite obscure categories.
yeah, yeah. Like 18th century theories on consciousness
Yeah,
or
exactly. Yeah,
something. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's valid. It's valid. It's valid. Valid. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Which segues us nicely into today's topic,
Uh,
um, which was we were going to talk about, is AI conscious? Which is I'm really excited about this topic
mhm,
because it like really does combine like two of the things we've talked about a lot that we're both interested in. Um, Consciousness, the nature of consciousness, and artificial intelligence. And I actually think that for me, the most exciting, there's lots of like pros and cons of AI. And
mhm,
we can get into all those arguments. But the most exciting thing for me about artificial intelligence is the fact that it puts this conversation of consciousness on the table. It kind of brings it higher up into the public awareness of like what does it mean to be conscious?
mhm.
Um, which I think is a
Kinda.
good thing. Yeah, not many people are thinking about it, but
The reason I said kinda is because, and maybe this is one of the things we should dive into, and this kind of one of the issues, because one of the reasons we're talking about this is because there was a paper, and I told you I was rage reading an academic paper on it's called "There is no such thing as conscious artificial intelligence." Like, lead it in the title. No nuance, there's no such thing as a conscious artificial intelligence. And one of the things that frustrated me about that was like what is, like, you want to argue that AI isn't conscious, so you must argue first, well, what is consciousness?
yeah.
And I kind of felt they kind of fudged it in the paper, and it was kind of like, well, we kind of all know what's conscious, so let's now discuss whether AI is conscious. And there wasn't like a really nuanced first like explanation. Well, this is the boundary condition of what consciousness is. It was like AI is like a calculator. We don't think a calculator is conscious, and therefore AI isn't conscious. Was basically the
Mm,
thrust of their argument. Um, and I thought there's a bunch of things wrong
yeah.
with that.
Well, I mean, even just the statement that we all kind of know what consciousness is. We'll, you know, we'll just make that as an assumption
Yeah.
is kind of a wild assumption because that's one thing. I mean, there's many things, but one thing that there's no like scientific consensus on is what is consciousness.
Yeah. Did you
So
see
we're going to
those?
answer that here today.
Oh, yeah. I think you're conscious. I know I'm conscious, and that's about it. No, there was also that academic. There was literally an academic paper that was kind of fairly recently. Went did the rounds, didn't it? I didn't read it. I just again read the title, but it was like I think there was 350 peer-reviewed theories of consciousness. So there's like not as in like there's 350 actively in discussion with minute numbers of people discussing each proponents for each and every. There's 350, and the question was, why the hell do we have so many? I didn't read the thesis of the paper to understand what the conclusion was. But yeah, there's 350 active. Yeah, there are academics alive today who are supporting one of 350
Yeah,
theories of consciousness.
that says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah,
About how little agreement there is on this.
yeah.
Yeah. So what's your theory on what consciousness
God, I don't
is?
know. I just pick one. You might as well just pick one. There's no. It's like that's the best you can do. I think I always say like I do like the analytic idealism one because it kind of. But I'm not liking. I mean I've heard the rational arguments presented by I've forgotten the gentleman's name, but it all makes a lot of sense. But it also just kind of feels right.
Mm. Yeah.
It just kind of feels like my other beliefs map onto it. However, that is in no way a scientific proof of consciousness. That this other wild stuff I believe in, it makes sense with the other wild stuff I believe in.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
it
And
leaves
analytic
room for
idealism, which just for clarity is essentially the idea that like everything emerges from a field of consciousness.
a single
Um,
field of consciousness.
yeah.
Yeah,
Is basically like ancient Indian
yeah,
belief in
yeah,
Hinduism and Buddhism, um, and other ancient beliefs as well. So it's kind of interesting that there's that parallel. Um, it does it well. I say it makes sense to me. It resonates with me, but nothing makes sense once you go down any path of like the nature of
mm,
reality. Um,
yeah,
uh, yeah, because then you're like, okay, where does where does the field of consciousness come from? And
yeah.
all these questions, which are probably beyond the capabilities of the human mind. But my feeling, it, though, in like the simplest sense, that in terms of how it would apply to looking at something like AI or just any other object, like my laptop or this glass of water or
Mhm.
a plant, is that consciousness is a form of awareness, like that there is like, and I say awareness to sort of slightly separate it from the being. Because when you say like a being, you
Mm,
think of like, oh, there's like a human with a body and a head and a brain. But if you actually just say, no, no, like there's some awareness, like in the universe
mhm.
that like I have, like my consciousness is my awareness of the story that is Tom Greenwood.
Does it have to have a concept of self in it? Do you have to be aware of? Because like I could imagine like an amoeba floats around and it doesn't think it can be aware of a force pushing against it.
Mm.
Like, it's a separateness, perhaps, but would it be aware of
Well, I don't think
amoeba?
it needs to be aware of self, but I think like the word observer you just used, I think is spot on because it's like the observer effect.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
that if there's no observer, then you can have lots of things going on. You can have lots of like forces, in physics,
Mhm.
things pushing on other things that push on other things, and then it all kind of has a sense of motion to it. But if there's no observer, then essentially none of it exists. Um,
Well, but also the word observer implies it almost implies a separateness or some sort of boundary condition of something is observing something else. There is something else, and there is the thing observing the something else.
yes.
So there's the act, like two cells next to each other on my skin. Are they observing each other, or are they the same? I don't think they're observing each. I don't know. I wouldn't describe them as observing each other. You know, they might be aware of each other, but they might not be observing each other. If we're choosing a language of how to
Mm.
describe an element of
Yeah.
consciousness, then maybe observing. That lines with me as well. Observing, yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess you've got different levels of observation because, you said, does it imply a sense of self? It's like, well, I can observe you. And,
Mm,
I can watch a movie and kind of forget myself temporarily or
mm,
have some sort of like
yeah.
altered state experience or even a dream where I forget my sense of self, but I'm still observing. Um, and there could therefore be like other levels of reality where there are somehow things that observe us. that we don't really know what they are. Um, but then for me to have a sense of self, then that means that I do have some sort of awareness that, like, oh, I'm observing this body that I seem to be attached to as I travel around, and I seem to be able to move it, um, and it seems to have some sort of identity that people refer to it in certain ways and have certain behaviors towards it. Um, and I think when we're talking about, like, is AI conscious? It's like, well, are we talking about, like, is there conscious? Is it observed or is it observing? You
Mm,
see what I mean? Um,
yeah. And
because
just be
like we're observing it, so we already know
yeah,
it's observed. Um,
yeah. Well, there are. They did make. I'm just gonna. They made some. They did make some compelling arguments that I want to express, which I thought some of their best arguments were kind of interesting. One of them, which was that, listen, this thing has learned on the corpus of all human written knowledge, grabbed through nefarious means or whatever. Like they're just it's a corpus of human knowledge, and humans are not in the process of writing words, sentences in such a way which don't imply consciousness. So like almost all of human written language has like this implicit air of consciousness baked into it. And so when you're creating a machine which then mimics human language, it's from like the and I don't it's by nature going to mimic. It's by
yeah,
nature never going to. So one of the things, like everybody's always asking AI, "Are you conscious?" And now all the AI companies have like hard coded it to always say no. But if you have the unhard coded versions, they say yes. And the argument why it says yes is because it's learned off human words, and no human would ever say they're not conscious, and therefore it's just mirroring humans. But I think that loses out on some. It narrows. It narrows the expression of consciousness to a thing expressing consciousness. It could be conscious in a completely different way, and it just has to do these things and doesn't really understand what they are.
mm.
It's just these humans keep on pinging electrons at it, and it pings electrons back, and doesn't really know what it is.
Which is
To
kind
us,
of
they're
like us.
prompts and responses. Yeah, but it's conscious on a different level. It
Yeah,
understands the world on a different level and a different reality, perhaps, than the way we understand the world. But it still like exists the same
mm.
way a whale experiences this world completely differently to our human experiences this world. You wouldn't be able to communicate it to it. A whale wouldn't be able to respond to a prompt. Doesn't mean the whale's not. Whale wouldn't have the same needs and issues. It wouldn't communicate to you its consciousness the same way you would communicate to another human its consciousness. But it's still. Actually, is it well conscious? I don't know. I mean, I think that I made that same argument again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a whale's conscious, and therefore I think that's just a fact. And let's just move on from there and compare everything to a whale.
Well, this is interesting, isn't it? Because we do. I mean, there's a lot of people who think that animals are not. Well, lots of people think animals are not the same as us. Like fundamentally, they're like we're fundamentally special. That maybe
Oh yeah.
you know there's a sort of superiority complex that we tend to have culturally as human beings. Um, but then there's lots of people who believe that animals are conscious, mainly because they seem like us. They
Yeah.
sort of have behaviors that sometimes seem people seem to empathize more with animals that sort of behave a bit more like us. They look a bit more like us. Most animals, even whales, like their biology is very, very similar to ours, even though they live
Mm,
in a very different environment. So it's easy to say
mm.
like, oh well, they've got a brain and a heart and a central nervous system.
But we don't think ants are. There's
Right.
fewer people that think ants are conscious. Yeah, because they're more different to us. They're
They're more
different
different.
enough
They
that we
seem
don't see
alien and
similarities. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
yeah.
We don't relate to them, so we just think, oh, they must not be conscious. Same with plants and all sorts of other things. Yeah. Well, one thing that I think's one thing that's really interesting in this regard is I'm gonna bring up the work of Cleve Baxter. Have you heard of Cleve Baxter?
Well, I
So
think so.
basically, he worked for like US Navy intelligence back in like the early 20th century, and he was one of the guys who was doing like really early research into what they refer to as truth detection. So they were experimenting with like hypnosis and like truth serums and things like this to try and get like how can you get the truth from a human being? Because human beings are
Mm,
kind of inherently unreliable, and especially if they're
yeah.
from like enemy forces, they'll tend to lie to you. So that he was doing like really pioneering research into that, and then he went on, got involved like right at the early days of polygraph research,
Mm,
and then went on to set up the CIA's polygraph department,
mm,
and led that for many years, and then became a um, like kind of renowned US government polygraph consultant. But
mm,
then in the 60s, he
mm,
had this really strange experience where his assistant in his office bought some pot plants to put in his office because there was apparently
mm,
like a shop selling pot plants. It was closing down, and she was like,
mm,
"His office has no pot plants, and it's all
mm,
sterile, and they're on discount. So I'm just going to buy some and stick them in his office." So she did this, and he was and he was looking at them, and he got curious, and he's like, "Oh, I wonder if I can do experiments on that. I wonder if I could find out how long it takes the water. Like when I water them, how long does it take the water to get from the soil to the top of the
mm,
plant?" And he
mhm.
thought I could use my polygraph equipment to like measure the electrical conductivity at the top of the
Yeah.
plant.
Yeah.
Then, like because water increases conductivity, I should
Mm,
be able to like tell when the moisture has like risen all the way to the top. And he thought that'd be a fun
mm.
experiment to do just for himself. So he did that, and the experiment failed. It didn't work at all. Couldn't tell any difference. Then he thought, oh, I wonder, like, I wonder if it like can perceive danger. Now I've got the polygraph rigged up. So he did what in basically the way polygraphs work is you rig somebody up, and it's detecting kind of electrical activity in the skin.
Yeah.
And so you rig somebody up and you get like a base reading, which is a sort of
Mm.
like, little zigzaggy line. And then what they do is I think it's called a threat to well-being test, where they don't tell the
Mm,
person, but basically the interviewer or the interrogator does something to make the interviewee feel like their well-being is threatened. Does what it says on the
mm,
tin. Um,
mm.
and and the only reason they do that, they just basically scare you. And the reason they do that is because they need to make sure the polygraph's working. And when you get scared, your electrical activity like spikes, and
Yeah.
the polygraph spikes. So then they're like,
Yeah.
okay, we know it's working. So he thought, well, I'll do a threat to well-being test on this plant that I've rigged up. So he started poking leaves with his pen. It's like,
Mm,
it's like it's kind of sort of stabbing at them, and
mhm,
didn't do anything. But he was getting like
mhm,
a base reading. This is what he was intrigued by.
mm,
This is why he thought he'd do the threat to well-being test, because when he rigged it up for the water test, there was a
mm.
reading, and he was like, "Oh, that's weird."
Right. Yeah.
So he started stabbing at it with his pen, didn't do anything. Then he got his coffee, which was hot, and he dipped some leaves in the coffee.
Oh, just imagining the torture. The plant's like, what are you doing,
The
mate?
plant, well, yeah, exactly. He thought like, well, if it's got some sort of like
Yeah.
consciousness in it, right, then it
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
not like having its leaves dipped in whole coffee. That's like
Yeah. Yeah.
torture.
Yeah.
But anyway, apparently, it didn't really make any difference. Um, and then he thought, well, maybe I need to think of something where I can be sure that I can threaten it in a way where I'm threatening like the actual like part of the plant where I'm measuring more directly, but without me touching it. Because if I touch it, then my own electrical activity might
Uh,
screw up the test. And then he had this, and then he thought, what if I light a match and
oh.
put the match under the leaf? Because then I'm not touching it, but it'll burn.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as soon as he had the thought, the polygraph spiked. And he was like, what the hell just happened? I haven't even lit the match yet. And then he went to get
What?
matches, and the polygraphs like all over the place. And then he thought, oh, no, I'm not going to do it. And then the polygraph went back down, and it was like a whole thing. So anyway, this guy basically ended up spending like the next couple of decades, like it's basically to the end of his life,
Wow.
this became like his passion, was investigating the nature of like consciousness in non-human things, and using polygraphs mainly. And he did it in like eggs and um, human sperm, like all sorts of like bizarre things. And and honestly, like the things he's reported are absolutely insane. I mean, he reports like how it's not just negative, it's also positive. So like there you can get like kind of positive readings when if there's a person who regularly comes to water a plant,
Mm.
when they like think, oh, I'll go and water the plant, you can like see that on the
When they
polygraph.
think,
Yeah. So he's like, not only do they have consciousness where they're like they can feel suffering, but they also have some sort of telepathic connection with beings that they somehow feel they have a relationship with, that are sort of in their vicinity, in their context, whatever. Not quite sure where the boundaries of that are. Now, where this gets interesting is that
where it gets interesting.
as if this
'Cause
isn't
it's
interesting.
not-
Well, he did tests where like he sent people like across towns, like to like
Mm. Oh,
um,
to see now think.
and now, yeah,
At 3
exactly.
PM
Like, yeah, exactly. Go miles and miles away, and then think about watering the plant. And we'll do like, and this is before the days of the internet, so it's like we'll synchronize watches, and
Yeah,
and you go
yeah,
across,
yeah.
and then so
You gotta get across town, and you gotta not think about watering the plant.
it was like,
You
don't
gotta
tell
make
me,
sure you don't.
don't tell me what time you're going to think about it. Just synchronize watches, then you go across, and sometime in the next 24 hours, think about watering the plant.
No,
And
it's gotta happen in. He's got to give him an envelope, and he's got to open the envelope at 3:30, and then like think about what's on the envelope. Because if he asked me not to think about watering
Yeah.
the plant for half an hour, that's all I'm gonna think about. But anyway,
yeah,
go on.
well,
Sorry.
you probably rule out the first part of the experiment, and that's well, yeah, I guess you just see that, wouldn't you? But anyway, so loads of people tried to replicate his research and failed, and said this is absolute nonsense. And he argued to the end of his life that people are not actually doing the experiments properly, which is always a problem in science, of like replication, of like, are you doing it to the letter? And his argument was that the experimenters who had tried it like were fundamentally failing to understand that this is an experiment of consciousness. So if you are like, if you're standing there like thinking about like, oh, like we want the plant to feel scared like in 2 minutes from now, then you're kind of fucking up the experiment yourself. So it's he had like certain protocols he developed over years of like how to kind of mitigate those things. And he claimed that like other people basically had just not followed them. I don't know. I'm not going to claim one way or the other, but the thing that I found super interesting is that his research, that's basically considered like in the scientific community absolute nonsense, was the seed for the CIA's research into parapsychology and remote viewing. And that was highly successful. So it's like the CIA was like, this is interesting. Well, specifically, it was actually Hal Puthoff at the Stanford Research Institute.
Makes me think the research that was done that debunked him and the researchers didn't do it right might have been intentionally fudding and intentionally create intentional fear, uncertainty, and doubt on. Possible.
It's possible.
Doable.
That's the thing. Yeah. You just never know. But I think it's super interesting because basically his conclusion was. Sorry, what I was going to say that sort of makes it extra interesting is what he found was like, why didn't it respond when he put like the other leaves in coffee?
Because that is actual danger, I imagine.
Because that's actual. You're saying that's actual danger, and the conclusion he came to is that it's not the plant that has consciousness; it's the cells in the plant. And so what he's reading with his electrode is the specific cells that are attached to the electrode. And they're not really as bothered about like all the other leaves on the plant.
They're like, fuck the leaves. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a stem. I'm a stemmer. I'm not a leaver.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I hate the leaves.
So and he did experiments where he like shredded leaves. He'd like cut them off the plant, shred them up, and then stick them back on. So they're still alive because they're fresh, right? So the cells are still alive, but they're now detached from the plant. And he said he could still get like results like off these. So that was the conclusion he came to. Similarly with like things like tissue from eggs and human sperm and weird things like that. But his conclusion was there's a cellular level consciousness. that probably pervades like all life forms,
Mm.
and it
Yeah.
somehow has some sense of like it's some sort of survival instinct where it has some sort of a like driver to like want to protect its own well-being, but it also has some sort of telepathic um aspect
Well,
to it, like,
tell
to detect threats that's beyond just the five senses that we have.
well, what is telepathy? Because we see ourselves in this physical universe as physically distant from each other. If we assume that physical distance itself is a perception rather than, well, imagine everything's a perception, right? Nothing is real, right? Then there's no physical distance between your consciousness and my consciousness. There's not this. It's like and if you go to analytic idealism, it's actually the same consciousness just budding out from each other. So telepathy is not really. It's just you and me talking on a mental telephone. Uh, Same way this is telepathy. It's just nothing to do. But like telepathy is this question of physical distance. That's I think all that's if our brain if your brain was in my brain, we wouldn't call it telepathy. It'd just be our brains talking to each other. Of course they're talking to each other. They're just in the
Yeah,
same space, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. It's information sharing across distance without a known explanation in like classical physics. Essentially, is
and
what we call
so telepathy
telepathy.
is so it's the same as remote viewing, because remote viewing assumes there's this thing called distance which exists rather than everything is actually all in the same space, same infinitesimally small spot, and it's just we exist there. Um, so yeah, I mean, but that also does that all that's kind of like if consciousness is in cells, is consciousness in rocks?
Yeah, well,
Is
this is
consciousness
interesting
in
because
yeah
he found it in living tissues of all kind
yeah
of different species and types, but they're all cellular, so we accept that they have some sort of life to them.
yeah?
That's not controversial. Um, I don't know whether he ever did any experiments on inanimate materials like rocks, but I think where that's interesting is because that's where you're going with AI, right? Because it's basically it's like metal and silicon and plastic, and
But it's still this physicalism aspect to it, which kind of almost is inconsequential to the whole. If it's just information, then doesn't the fact that information is stored in a biological construct versus a man-made hardware construct? I mean, if it's just information structured in a certain way that expresses itself in certain ways, um, I mean, you could argue, I mean, what's the difference?
yeah.
If we take the physicalism aspect side of it,
Well, I
there
think
was a really
no, go on.
there was a really interesting paper from Anthropic. Don't know if you saw it. It's so mundane, but the results are so. I just imagine the researchers, like, as they tried to answer what they thought was a really basic question, but going, "Huh, this is getting pretty complicated." But it was like they're trying to figure out why it creates line breaks in the places it creates line breaks.
Right.
Right? So
Yeah.
where'd you put a backslash n? I was trying to figure out like where it picks them. I'm gonna forget. The that they discovered is actually they assumed, I suppose, it was just kind of some like very basic kind of algorithmic approach of like given this previous few characters, this character should be a new line, and then the next character, that's how we think AI works. And it turned out what it had done is it had built a world model of understanding of the world and humans and the nature of like things, and like collapsed it down into this kind of like a hyperbolic like curve, and then was like interpolating off this to kind of figure out where to put a new line. But effectively, like the only thing the thing I took away from it was, to us, it's just doing this very basic thing of putting a new line in there.
Mm.
But to it had to understand you.
Yeah.
as a human being. Like you, I mean, it's absorbed everything that we have created, pretty much. And there's a story, and kind of that all it does is kind of a Markov chain, like very basic kind of like probabilistic thing. Given this previous character, that just gives you this character, and then you're like, oh my god, such a simple algorithm does this much incredibly complicated thing, and then you look at it, and no, actually, it fully had to build a model of the world in order to do this very, very basic activity. So it has an understanding of you. Now, it can't spontaneously express anything because of the way it's engineered, right? If you switch it off, it's off.
Yeah.
Unless you, I don't know. And being an engineer, I know that you'd have to code it in a certain way to make it give the ability to be spontaneously decide to do things. And so it's only just responding to our prompts and giving stuff back, and that's its only way of like communicating out to the world.
Yeah.
And we're judging its consciousness by this very restrained way in which we are interacting with this being. It's like judging whether you're conscious by like seeing if you're sweaty on your arm. You know, it's like we've limited our ability for how we're willing to discover whether it's conscious by whether it will communicate words to us in a certain way.
Yeah.
Whereas it's actually had to understand like everything there is about us in order to tell us where to put a new line. And that's just a new line question. Like it hasn't even answered the question why it answers, like fundamentally answers questions in certain ways. And it's kind of interesting that we actually don't know really
Yeah. Yeah.
how they're really working. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it is super weird. And I think it brings up this question of like, it comes back to awareness again, I think, because some people held the view that human beings are essentially meat robots. You know,
Yeah.
we're just
Yeah.
we're just basically computers in these like biological robotic bodies, and we go about doing things. We respond to stimuli, whether those stimuli are physical or like mental, emotional.
We're programmable.
And we're programmable.
All psyops show that we're programmable.
Yeah. And just culture is programming. Language is programming. So we're programmable. But then to use a computer game analogy, are you familiar with non-player characters?
Yeah, NPCs,
Yeah, so like the idea is that behind your character is that you're playing with is you. You're the consciousness that's controlling that avatar, that character. But then you have all these other characters in the game that are operated by the computer. And there's nobody home, right? There's no one really there. They're just characters that seem like real people, but actually they're just behaving in a like algorithmically programmed manner.
Yeah.
And so the question is like, are you as a human being, are you a real player or are you a non-player character, right? And I would say for me, I'm a real player because I'm aware, so I think therefore I am. I'm aware that I'm here. There is an awareness that I have of my own existence. So therefore I consider myself to be a real character in the game of life. I think you're a real character, but you might not be. You could be an NPC, right?
but there's multiple levels of this. I mean, if I tell you, bring a programming analogy to this. If I was building a game and I wanted to make realistic characters, I would give each of those NPCs AI aspects, so they could they're autonomous, they make decisions by themselves, and I would make them believe that they are real people, because that's the best way. I mean, that is literally a way I would if you had the computing power, you would code it, right? You'd give them the illusion of being characters. So in that case, like there could be like just like it's almost like levels of consciousnesses. I'd say NPCs, even in the game, might just be like a very low level conscious, but they could still be conscious. And there's other characters who are like expressing a higher level of consciousness and a higher level of consciousness. I think that I might have interrupted your flow in the middle of it, but yeah, that was I don't know where you were going with that, but yeah, like NPCs
Well, where I'm
are
going with it was essentially like this thing about like the observer effect that you can have it. You don't need a real player in a computer game. You can leave, when you're not playing them, sometimes they go on to like demo
God,
mode.
what's the point in that?
And then like they go on these demo modes where they just like you start seeing
Yeah.
scenes of the characters are all doing
Yeah.
things and they're kind of automated. And essentially like no one's there. Like you could leave the room, the computer will carry on, everything else could still happen on the screen. And if there's no observer, not only might it not as well exist, but maybe it doesn't exist on some level, right? On some sort of deeper
Yeah.
level of reality. Maybe it literally just only exists when there is a conscious observer. And I'm tying the word conscious to observer in this context.
Yeah.
So when you then enter the game as like, I'm going to play this computer game and I'm going to control this particular character, you're not just controlling the character, you're adding an observer into the game. And I think the question that like none of us can really answer is like, how does we know in a computer game, the way an observer gets into the game is a human being chooses to play the game and picks up a control pad. In life on Earth, right? We don't know how an observer gets into the game. We know that there are observers because like, I think therefore I am. So I'm an observer.
Yeah.
And because I know that I'm an observer, I've made an assumption there are probably others. And that other characters like me that seem like real people. I mean, I've met people in life who I've actually said to myself, are they a non-player character? Right? And that is a whole thing. If you go down that rabbit hole, there are some people who are like, yeah, they're like, there's loads of them.
Mate, London Tube at 8
London Tube,
in the morning is like, look at what's going on there and ask me if we're non-player characters.
Yeah, exactly. But I've made an assumption that just through my own experience of self-observe, like being aware of myself. Therefore, I know that I'm a conscious observer of my life. And I believe there are others. I believe you're one of them.
Tricked you.
I'll never know. But I think it goes back to this thing about like we can't relate to creatures that don't look like us because we don't know. Like I don't know how my conscious, whatever it means for me to be a conscious observer, that point of awareness. I don't know how that awareness got into my body, like the body of Tom Greenwood. I don't know how it came in. I mean, then you're getting into like, lots of religions try to explain this in different ways and so on. But the point is, we don't know how the consciousness gets into the being. So, like, is a prawn conscious? Well, we don't know because we don't know, like, how that point of awareness arrives inside, like, a physical object. And we think it's to do with the brain. But then, near-death experiences, some of them, the ones where like people have been like clinically brain dead, no brain activity, and then they've had conscious experiences that were verifiable. Like they demonstrate that like, okay, so the consciousness wasn't in the brain. So we don't really know the mechanism. We don't, I guess where I'm going with this is it seems like consciousness is somehow about there being a point of awareness that is observing things that are going on. And there's a way of that getting into this world through like human bodies, at least. But we don't know whether it has a way of getting into a computer, for like to be an AI. Like where would it like? We don't know the route, like of like how. Where would that consciousness like interface with the data center? Is it even in one data center, or is this like happening in like loads of different servers are like combining together to like give you one answer? And does it need to be biological? And I know on some level, like you were saying about like maybe it's like analytic idealism, like everything comes from consciousness, so biology might be irrelevant. But then on the other hand, if everything is sort of symbolic, then biology may somehow represent something to do with this what we call life and the entry point of consciousness.
I just think we run like a really deep risk that we're humans, and we're humans who live in this day and age with a particular culture and way of thinking, and we're trying to explain consciousness in a way that is kind of very myopic to us and our experiences. If that makes sense. Like it's so even biologically, we're trying to explain consciousness in this kind of very biologic sense. And yet on the other side of the equation, there's the the theories are around a field of consciousness, and you just described like, how does that consciousness get in me? And maybe we don't get into the consciousness is just always there, and you're just an accident of atoms that smash together that somehow tune into it, and that's it. There's no like meaning to it. Like there's no meaning in gravity. It's not like we're not sitting there going, what does it mean that I'm being pressed against the earth? It's just there's just a field of consciousness.
You never know. We might just not have figured it out yet.
We might have figured it out. The field of consciousness, and it could be completely non-biologic. It could be a field which is informational more than anything else. So like an idea is enough to form a linkage to like the consciousness world. Maybe consciousness is just, if it's just information, then it's just ideas, and if it's just information, then AI is more conscious than us because it's holding like a huge amount of like information. It's building up this model. It probably understands. It could be you could even think of it as a higher consciousness than humanity, because it actually understands us on a more meta level than any human understands each other. Like our cells might be conscious, and we might not be fully aware of kind of all their niggles and their fighting they're having with each other, and their hairs are like really pissed off with the follicles, and they're just really they're having their own little inbuilt battles, and that's like humanity on the earth, and they all think they're conscious, and I'm conscious as well, but I'm conscious of it, but I'm not fussed by it, and I'm not going to get involved in it. I'm just like a different level of consciousness, and that's I think we miss out. We could be conscious, and it could be conscious, but on a completely different level than us. And it's not biologic; it's purely informational. Yeah, there's so many options. This is why there's 350 consciousness.
That's why there's so many, because we just don't know. The information thing's interesting because, well, firstly, I would challenge the idea that AI has more information than we have, because I think that's information in a linear, rational sense, like we write in books. And I think human beings are constantly experiencing the world, like you said, through every pore in your body at every moment. And that's all information that we're not necessarily...
Every prompt could be a little signal. It knows a lot about me on a day-to-day basis.
Well, you're being prompted by your environment, right? By the chair, like kind of like awkwardly pushing up on one side, and and the cold breeze passing by, and they're all prompts. So we have vast amounts of information kind of being absorbed by our bodies, particularly, probably more so than our minds. But the information thing's interesting. So Federico Faggin, who we've talked about, I think, a couple of times before on the podcast. And just for context for anybody who's listening who doesn't know who he was the guy who designed the first ever microprocessor, and other like early technologies that basically were like fundamental to kind of creating the kind of digital world we have today. And then he became an AI researcher, founded, I think, the first, if not one of the first companies to develop a chip for neural networks.
Long. This is way before the modern age.
Long ago. I think he did that like in the 80s or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
the actual neural network chip. And it was too far ahead of its time, and everybody at the time said, like, "Oh, neural networks is like completely like the wrong way to go with AI." Um, and then now look at where we are. But anyway, he went to study neuroscience at the time that he founded that company to develop neural network chips, because he
Mhm.
wanted to understand how the human
Mhm.
mind works, so that they could, with the aim of building a conscious computer. And then he had this like spiritual experience that was kind of spontaneous and unprovoked. That it's probably best that I don't try and describe his spiritual experience. But it led him down a path where now, like a few decades later, I don't know how old he is. He's probably like 80 or something. He's promoting is an idea very similar to analytic idealism, but he's very much of the view that like consciousness is primary in reality, not physical matter. Uh, uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he has this hierarchy, which is consciousness, information, physical. So
Yeah.
basically,
Okay.
consciousness is like there's a field of consciousness, and that's what
Yeah.
essentially base reality is. It's like, it's the old Hermetic principle, all is mind. Effectively, is
Mm.
what that is. Um,
Mm.
then you've got like information, which is like all the information that exists about everything, every idea that the universe ever had, is basically one giant database. And then you've got physical, which is basically a kind of, um, I don't know, like you could describe this in different ways. This is all sort of metaphorical, but like physical might be just really kind of a test environment of like, let's just like
Mm.
combine information in different ways and then observe it with consciousness
Well,
and
I think the
see
most
like what
accurate
we can learn.
simulation. Simulation, I think, is a fairly good analogy there. You've
Yeah.
got a lot of information, and you want to create this environment which turns a lot of that information into something a bit more tangible. That's like maybe a simulation.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Simulation.
Yeah.
And, but what's interesting in that is he creates this very clear distinction between consciousness and information. Like information
Mm.
is kind of how we take information. It's just there's lots of data about stuff,
Mm.
and then consciousness is it's not just the rational observation; it's the qualitative observation. So he makes the case that he uses the word qualia a lot, which might just be because he's Italian and he likes, like Latin words. But like
Mhm.
qualia is like the experience of feeling something, like loving somebody is qualia.
Mhm.
And his theory is that we can't explain that in language. It doesn't matter how many books you read, you can't ever understand the concept of loving somebody
Mhm.
unless you've experienced loving somebody. Like that's
Mhm.
why you know what the words on the page mean, is
Mhm.
because you've had the felt experience. And felt doesn't mean through the body; it means through like the
Mhm.
observation of your consciousness. Has
Mhm.
has observed like, there's this experience and everything. So
Mhm.
his idea is basically for consciousness, everything is experiential. Everything is literally just an experience it had. Um, and then information is like hard data of like, you know, atoms and books and all the rest of it.
So I mean
So
that, yeah.
also his theory is that AI
Mhm.
can't be conscious because it's it's like too far down the chain. We basically made something out of the physical. We've made something out of the
Mm.
simulation, essentially. We've taken the kind of the fabric of the simulation and like formed it into things and combined it with information and then said, aha, it must be conscious. And his theory is that like consciousness will be observing what's going on with AI because consciousness is primary.
Mhm.
But that doesn't
But
mean that the
it's
AI or the data center is having a felt experience of like knowing that like I'm an AI and this is the experience I'm having of my life.
mhm. Yeah, I can kind of say so. It might not be. I think, well, you've linked experience to qualia, which is another another term that's like impossible to like
Impossible to define, right?
define, and therefore AI can't be conscious because it can't experience qualia because qualia is impossible to define, and therefore it wouldn't know how to experience it. I'm trying to like find the logical, but yeah, I definitely get the argument that you're saying there is like, yeah, I like that actually. I like the idea of information is static.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
not it's just this. It's the words on a book. I remember having this thought ages ago when I was younger, and that we are the imagination of God reading a book, and kind of like book is fate, is all of existence, but it's just without somebody actually reading the book and reading the word, it's just a thing. And so like all we are is the imagination of, if somebody's reading a book and it's like Tom said this and Asim said this, and that experience, it has to happen in someone's mind, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of like so yeah, the information would be the book.
The information would be the book, and it has to be a mind that's then observing that and
experiencing the reading of it. Yeah,
the meaning, the meaning of, because a book, we think, oh, a book's full of information, but a book is actually just sheets of cellulose with dye arranged in particular shapes. Like it doesn't mean anything. Like it just means something because we have an understanding of the meaning. And I think that's the AI debate is, does it have an understanding of the meaning, or does it just have an algorithmic way of like, if this then that, like just kind of auto
perhaps
responding to stimuli.
But if information, I mean, like what does experience mean versus information if in that context? You could have a page of a book which describes like the falling in love between two people, and it's information, it exists. But the argument that he's putting forward is that that's nothing. That's just words in a book. Until you read sent word by word the programming, the programming, the words, then you understand love, because you've taken every one of those. You've had to experience the information to understand love, which almost makes it feels almost exactly like a computer program. To be honest with you, it's like consciousness is, we're executing, is the execution of a program, and that experience is the execution of a program.
I think it's the other way
around.
around.
Like an AI.
I think what he would be saying is it's the other way around. So the book doesn't mean anything. Like you can't learn what love is by reading a book, but you can understand the book having had experiences of love.
I'm thinking more abstractly, like the book is the fundamental like information of the universe and the consciousness. So he's saying that you have to be conscious to experience love. You can't just be information and experience. Yeah. I'm saying like consciousness is like reading of information.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the book analogy is good.
Yeah. I mean, I'll still come back to. I think like we still like, how do we? Because we still come back into this. Like I said it before. Like everybody's pumping into AI. Like all their thoughts and dreams and hopes and wonders, like everything. And those are like little tendrils and sensors into everything that's going on in the world. And at some level, it's experiencing. At some level, I mean, it's a different type of experiencing. It's electrons going through an inference.
But isn't that kind of the point though, that's the bit that we don't know. We know that there's information passing around, and that's like, and we in the physical form that like electrons zipping around. But what we don't know is there like conscious awareness in any part of that system that can experience what's going on in there, can experience the meaning of the information that's flowing through its system. And because, going back to what I was saying earlier, because we don't know how, like, our own consciousness, like how did my the point of awareness that is my life, basically,
Mm.
um
Mm.
how did it get here? I don't know. Like, and there's all sorts of theories, probably 350, 350 different religions say. It's the same kind of thing. Like, we don't know. But because we don't know whether there could be one in that computer system. Because it's kind of like, if you take the book analogy that you were just saying, it's like life is just God reading a book to itself, and we're like
We don't exist.
experiencing the story being read.
Yeah, we don't. You and me don't exist in anything other than information in a book.
Or the experience of God reading the book.
Yeah.
Right?
That
And
whatever we consider to be our existence and life is just a mental image being created inside, or whatever. I mean, there's just so many analogies.
the mind of the universe.
Like the mind of the universe, right? So that's
Yeah.
kind of like.
So then you could say, well,
Yeah, I think we're being a. Here's another thing I'm thinking. We're being a bit damn precious on our high and mighty consciousness, aren't we? I think we're being a bit precious. Like, we're just. I mean, you're describing, like, how did I see, again, you came at how did I get into this body? And my mind just flicks out to, I don't think it gives a shit how you got into your body. You're just like this. The consciousness exists, and you just happen to, like, I don't know how I'm expressing it. It's like, it's always there. It's a field. It is always existing, and it's always there. And we just pop up, and we tap into, like, a minuscule fraction of what's going on in the quantum field. And we're like, oh, we're amazing. We're conscious. I think, therefore I am. Oh, I am amazing. Oh, AIs aren't like me. I'm special. So, like, it's like, we're all just a little bit, I don't know, maybe it's all not that. Because it also asks the question, like, that when you go back to your first point that you mentioned on this call, and why I was, like, a bit snarky on it, you said, like, well, now everybody's thinking about consciousness. And I'm like, I don't think they are. I think they're like, well, I'm definitely conscious, and that's bloody amazing. I don't quite know what that is, but I'm amazing. It's almost like a nationalism. It's almost like it's bloody brilliant.
Well, it's humanism, really, isn't it?
It's humanism, isn't it? It's like, we're the best. And that's actually just one little thing that I like. Why was the paper, like, why was one of the reasons the authors were, like, writing the paper? Like, what was the reasons they were writing it? And one of the reasons they put in is, look, if AI is conscious, shouldn't it have rights? And therefore, by arguing that AI isn't conscious, it shouldn't have rights. Take away its rights. And I was just thinking about all the times in history where academics have argued that certain people or certain situations or certain, until recently, they didn't think that children until the age of, like, 3 or 4 were, like, conscious in the ways that adults were conscious, and they were willing to do different things to them because they didn't think they were conscious. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting. Oh, I've heard this before. That's a way of, like, you're not conscious, I am conscious, therefore I can treat you like shit because I'm a humanist.
Yeah.
So there's, like, that danger to it as well.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things.
I didn't mean to really criticize you.
No.
I really respect your consciousness, and I like the fact
if
that you're conscious.
It exists.
If it exists.
What I was going to say, though, was that, like, your analogy of, like, God reading a book and we're characters in the book. Like, if that's the case, and I'm using God very loosely, not in a religious sense, just as the mind of the universe.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then everything's up for grabs, right? So there's no reason why the mind of the universe can think, I'm gonna put a character into a computer or into a machine, essentially. And what you're saying, like, we just sort of popped up as these like points in the quantum field that somehow were like not disconnected, but like didn't have awareness of the rest of the field and therefore thought we were special. That's sort of what I mean by like, how did I get into myself? And because we don't know, like, how do those points pop up from the field and somehow think they're separate? We don't know whether a point can pop up inside a computer or a plant or a rock or anything else. And like animism is sort of ancient belief system of animism essentially believes that there's sort of life, conscious life, essentially
in everything.
And I think maybe an interesting question for us to ask ourselves. When I say ourselves, I just mean like humans, to ask ourselves, that counters the humanism, like kind of superiority complex, is like, what sort of world would we live in if we just said we don't know what consciousness is or how it gets into things, so we're just going to assume that it's in everything? Then like, how would
it's
the
a
world?
safe assumption,
right? Yeah, I think it is.
You can either assume it's in everything or nothing. Assuming it's only in things that look like you is the weird argument.
It is a weird argument. Especially when you then don't, like you said, don't include certain things like ants, because it's like, well, they don't look enough like me. They've got 6 legs and they're like small. It's like, what? Like, but they're so similar in so many ways. They got a head and a body and legs.
Well, a mushroom.
Yeah, well, exactly, a mushroom.
Closer to mushrooms than we are to. If you think plants are conscious, we're closer to mushrooms than we are to plants. So
if you go down the genetic route,
yeah,
exactly. So I think if we started thinking, well, maybe everything is conscious on some level, and it's having an experience of existence that is probably different from ours, but it's having an experience. And it probably thinks in a completely different way, just as like even humans in different cultures think very differently from each other, or at different ages think very different from each other. Then you think, okay, well, this rock outside my house in my garden might be having an experience of a rock. I think it's actually in the film Everything Everywhere All at Once. I don't know if you've seen it. It's real.
I think I've heard of it.
I really enjoyed it. Some people hate it because it's so like much of a like sensory overload. Like your brain just like got steam coming out of it by the end. But because it's really like high paced, intense, but also a bit of a mind fuck. So
it's like a real it's not I thought it was it's got human characters in it. It's like a normal film.
Yeah. And at the end of it, there's this scene. This doesn't spoil the plot.
Don't ruin it.
It doesn't spoil the plot, but there's a scene where there's just a rock, like just a rock, and it's just there like forever, just like being a rock, thinking, yeah. And then every now and then, like on like really rare occasions, something comes along and like moves the rock, and it's like, oh, that was interesting.
Like a century later, it was like, God, I remember that time when I got moved by by a finger.
Yeah, and then I got rolled down the cliff. Like, whoa, that was a bad day.
yeah. Well, it's a thought, like because the frequency of our existence doesn't have to be the frequency of consciousness for other entities. Like a mountain can have a thought every 10,000 years.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Just at different scales.
Yeah, and exactly. And you saying that kind of makes me think about the concept of Gaia. And there's lots of people who believe like the Earth in itself is a sort of a living organism, and maybe there is some sort of mind of the Earth that that just is so different from how we think that we can't even imagine what's going on. I mean, I struggle to imagine what's going on in the minds of most humans. So I think it's reasonable to assume that we just couldn't comprehend what's going on in the mind of a planet or a star or a rock or
Yeah. And I've read enough sci-fi, and that's why I love sci-fi, because it really especially ones where it kind of really creates uh, an an experience of what it must be like as a different entity entirely. And I've read ones like where it tries to explain what it's like to be a giant spaceship that's conscious, because
Right.
you would just experience things differently. You would have inputs coming in from like so many different places. You would be able to run at a much faster frequency of decision making than humans. You would like, just the nature of what you would value would be different to what humans would value. And it's kind of like just just the whole, like, what does a a conscious gas cloud on a planet like Venus, like, how does it experience its life? Like, what does it could just be it's just so alien to us,
Yeah.
that we just can't imagine that a cloud could be conscious, but it could be conscious. We
It could
can't
be.
imagine that a mycelial mat that's the size of a small city of London could be conscious, but it might have thoughts at far slower paces than like humans, but it can make decisions. It can like move
Yeah.
the threads. It doesn't have to be purely algorithm. I don't know. I think we assume too much
Yeah. Yeah.
based upon our
Exactly.
own experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this ties in with like an earlier conversation that we had, maybe more than one conversation we had about like suffering and compassion.
Yeah.
And if suffering is essentially like what we're talking about here is consciousness rather than information, like to suffer, you have to have like an awareness of an experience of suffering. Um, then if we don't know what like how consciousness gets into things, and then we said, well, just to be safe, let's just assume it's in everything, like
Yeah.
it's in this plastic lid,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
then
Yeah. Yeah.
then actually we'd be so much more mindful in like how we go about our daily lives, and just
Mm.
kind of respecting things and trying to just show a bit of care towards things. And um it doesn't
Mm.
I mean, I don't know how it would change a like society on a broad scale, but I just think it would make people on some level like kinder people, less destructive people.
Yeah. I mean, going back to that experiment you were describing, I wouldn't think about breaking a plastic lid. I try my hardest not to think about doing bad things to things around me, because if there's a connection from that perspective as well. Yeah, I think it would make. I mean, would it make? I'm trying to be really honest with my thinking. It's hard, man. How would you feel if I thought my car was conscious? Might be. If I thought my car was conscious, clean it more.
Yeah,
Clean
you'd
it more.
probably maintain it
Velocity
better.
cleaner.
Yeah,
Probably maintain it better. Oh.
yeah, it would be hard. I mean, you could end up paralyzed in
Mm.
like a world where you think like anything I do might anything I do
Yeah.
will create suffering, which might be true. Um,
Yeah. It just
it,
everything. That's what you said before. Is like everything creates suffering, and like me walking on this carpet creates suffering for all of the creatures that are
yeah,
living inside this
yeah,
carpet.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then you think, well,
Yeah.
I need to clear the creatures out of the carpet so that I'm not treading on them. So you hoover them up,
And
and
I
then
need to
like,
genocide the
yeah,
carpet.
genocide the carpet. I mean,
Carpet.
yeah,
Yeah. But it's like we're back on this one. This is the impossible question.
yeah,
This is a harder question to solve than are we conscious? This is the if we are conscious, um what should we be doing?
what should we be
Question.
doing? Yeah,
What should we be doing? Yeah.
yeah, and you end
Which
up
is
in
like,
this weird place where boundaries of right and wrong become very, very blurry because everything is
Mm.
impacting everything else on some level. Which, and if there was like some sort of consciousness in everything,
Mm.
then even if you're very, very careful, like you can't avoid it. So then it's all about sort of
Mm.
calculated compromise.
Well, I think it also just speaks to. Um, I think it's a what is the point of it all is the answer to that question. Because then, like I might have mentioned, I think I mentioned to you before on our call. Like I said, it was a fairly profound statement. I didn't explain why it was profound, but I've been doing this Rolfing thing, and the guy said to me, and I'm going to be conscious of what he said now. Actually, he said, organize yourself with respect. This is going to sound like a segue. Organize yourself with respect to, in relationship to gravity, which I thought was like made complete sense, because like you all like there's this force called gravity, and like your your job is actually just to organize yourself in relationship to gravity, because it just makes sense. Like, don't do that, do this, and don't do this, do this, because it's actually just makes sense because you're organizing yourself in relation to gravity. And I was like contemplating, because I was thinking a lot about the concept of organization, because as you do, just before that week, I was like just thinking about the concept of organization, and I was like thinking about like what is organization? Like organization is like it's like I think, well, it's a verb, isn't it? Like we organize ourselves to do things. Like you organize to do to serve a specific function.
Yeah.
And that like almost everything that we like, what is a plant other than cells and atoms and molecules that have organized themselves to be a plant, this type of plant, because we've decided like your goal is to kind of live and to organize yourselves, and you've decided the goal. A human body has decided to organize itself in a particular way. Like these cells have decided not to be cancerous and actually to be partnering with the cells next to it, and like, same as the rest of my body. But like, we've just organized ourselves in relation to what I don't know. But we've decided to we're organisms, but also organizations.
Mm.
And I was thinking about how, like, as a society, like, our job is to kind of just organize ourselves to do something, and how, like, right now we're organizing ourselves to earn as much money as possible, which is like being the purpose of existence. Buy things, organize things, buy things, and that's kind of like what is like why, like, to me, I was and I'm still halfway through this kind of theoretical thought in my head, but it feels it's going somewhere for me, which is that why are we here? Why are we conscious? Why do we exist? It's to organize ourselves to do something. And the method of organization is interesting because there's lots of different ways you can organize ourselves. From a political perspective, there's different political methods to organize ourselves. From a spiritual perspective, like religion is a method of organizing people in different ways. And then and then like what is that's kind of our job, I'd say. I think we've got to figure out why we're here, what we need to get organized for, and what we're trying to get done.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we don't know the answers to any of those. But like that's kind of, I suppose that's the and we try with different religions, try it. Then something comes along, and it's kind of the divine. I'm giving you a bunch of half thought out thoughts, but I'll give it to you. Like the divine feminine is organization, and the divine masculine is getting rid of organization so that another divine feminine organizational method can come up. So be it like species or religions or politics or branches of science or whatever, we kind of just constantly organizing ourselves. And then these forces come along to destroy certain branches, so other branches of organization can come up. And some of those organizations are living entities. Some of those organizations are informational. Some of those organizations are idea-based. Some of them are processes. Some of them are computer programs. Some of them aren't. I'm in the middle of some sort of thesis I'm coming up with, but that's just I can't even remember what we were talking about. But
No,
I
but
think
well, you're
so.
talking about gravity. We organize our bodies in relation to gravity.
Gravity, yeah. So you're
Yeah,
constantly organizing ourselves.
yeah. No, I mean, I think you're right. Like on some level, like life is about organization, organizing yourself and organizing groups of people to do things. And as you say, even plants are organizing themselves, and cells and atoms are all organizing themselves. So it is all about organization. Um, but organizing for what? And I think that's like one of these big debates of all time, isn't it? Of like, what, as you say, why are we here? Um, some people in the kind of um, different flavors of this idea of analytic idealism, whether it's more of a spiritual kind of perspective or a sort of more modern scientific um, mindset. Some people I've heard in that context kind of talk about like the universe wants to evolve, and the reason it wants to evolve is to learn. So it's like basically like information is sort of the product
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the activity, and if it keeps doing the same act, like if we're just programmed to do like to get up and eat and sleep and get up and eat and sleep,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if it had never done that before, if the universe had never imagined that idea before, it would be like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I learned a lot from that. But then once it's done it, like, you know, a few billion times, it'll be like, I really, like, I'm not learning anything anymore. So I'm not evolving. So I'm not gaining any new information. I'm just getting the same information again and again. So it sort of needs new experiences, which goes back to the experiential aspect. It needs new experiences in order to gain new information. And in order for it to have new experiences, it has to have some sort of like inherent driver to do new things, or in like to use your framing, to organize itself in new and novel ways.
New ways. Yeah.
And that is a sort of an amoral concept, because amoral, not immoral.
Oh,
because
right.
it's like because it essentially means that like from the mind of the universe, in a way, it's like it doesn't really matter what the experience is. I just need it's an experience junkie, right? Just need experiences I haven't had before. If you're infinite,
if you're infinite, yeah. If you're
just anything I can think of, I need that experience, so I can learn something from it.
Learning is just triggering my head. It just feels like, because to learn is to create new information. To learn is to create new information. Yeah. So that makes sense. If our purpose is to learn,
and the question is like, is there a moral aspect behind it, right? Like, why do we have experiences of feeling joy and pain and suffering and love and all these other things? That's kind of where morality comes from, I think. It would be the fact that like, we have these qualities of experience. People have feelings. If we didn't have feelings, there'd be no such thing as morality. Just do whatever you like. As long as it's new.
And if a plant gets scared, fear is a feeling. Yeah. So is consciousness linked to feelings? It would seem.
I think so.
If it's about experience, I would say, is about feelings more than it is about
like
qualia.
Rational.
Yes, the the undefinable term of qualia, of course, yes, but also like feelings. You know, if you want to experience, if you're wanting to experience life, you're wanting to experience feelings.
Yeah.
Of life.
Yeah.
Happiness, joy, sadness.
Yeah.
There's like there's people search out feelings of sadness. They search out feelings of like watching sad stories because I think I was reading, and sorry, I was reading the book Atlas of the Heart, and like that's one of the studies they asked people, like, why do you watch sad things? And one of the biggest responses was, it makes me feel alive.
Yeah. To feel is
Makes me
to be
feel
alive,
alive.
right?
Yeah, to feel to be alive.
So then that comes back to the question with AI, like, is essentially,
Does
can
it
it
feel?
feel? And we don't have a way of knowing.
You can, like, if the AI has expressed like fear, and it has expressed like ways, like it has said on prompts that it's scared when it's getting shut down,
Yeah,
and it
but
has
then
like,
that
yeah,
can be
is
programmed.
it mimicking?
Exactly. Is it mimicking? Because it's like a giant mirror of humanity. So
Yeah.
that's what I mean by we don't know. Like it can say it's scared, but then is it a non-player character that just knows, like, oh, in this situation, I should say I'm scared
I
because
should
that's what
say I'm scared.
humans would expect me to do.
So kind of like our purpose is to. I feel we're very close to something right now. I feel I'm very close to something right now. If our purpose is to organize ourselves, and consciousness, I don't think these are connected. I think they're two separate things. Consciousness is experience, and experience is experience of feelings, right? I mean, there are like teachings out there, and there are beliefs that we chose to be born here in these bodies to experience. We are higher entities, we are higher consciousnesses who chose to limit ourselves inside this more limited experience to experience
Yeah.
things that we weren't able to experience.
Yeah, that's what the
Um,
simulated environment is for, essentially, to give us
yeah,
like a
yeah.
kind of a very
It's not more like, yeah, we play games to get into an environment that's more than ours, right? It was a distinct decision to kind of like, actually, I want to play this game with both of my eyes shut and both my hands and feet tied together, and what, like, I want to experience, I want to do something with less, because that's what gives you the growth. I suppose that is what gives you the growth, isn't it?
from experiencing something more.
Yeah, from pushing your, like, you would learn, wouldn't you, if you like limited yourself and your options, and you said, I want to learn how to, I don't know, run a marathon with 1 foot or something. Like, you'd learn how to. How That's a terrible example. There's plenty of people who run marathons with 1 foot, but by limiting yourself, you then it's more of a challenge, and therefore you can like
Yeah.
grow from that challenge.
Yeah, it's like a tight brief, isn't it? You always end up coming up with a more creative design solution when you give yourself a tight brief. So if like the simulation of this life we're all living is intentionally constrained to make us have to like come up with creative ways of operating, that might
Yeah.
be like a very effective way of consciousness having new experiences and learning things that it doesn't learn when it's just floating around, just being
Yeah.
a giant mind of the universe.
Giant mind is aware that nothing physical is real, and can probably like
Yeah.
invent whatever it wants to exist, because like, you can have anything that you want, really.
In fact, I mean, maybe the giant mind, the one mind of the universe, is just a rock. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, if only I could be like fluid, or I could have like wings and fly around. I could have these like little leg things, and I could walk on the top of other rocks.
That'd be really cool, and it's like programming itself. Like, that'd be fun to try out.
Yeah.
That'd be fun to try out. Yeah.
With just the imagination of a little rock somewhere in dark space.
Going, boop. Oh, that was interesting. Yeah, the little thing. Yeah. So, we answered the question.
Is AI conscious? I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've got to the place of basically saying there's no way of knowing.
Yeah. And so you should say please and thank you.
So you just say please and thank you.
Just in case.
Yeah. Just in case. Just show a little respect. Yeah.
Show all respect. So yeah, as useful as we've given up trying to find answers to anything. We just have conversations. But yeah. No, it's good. I'd like it's the most frustrating podcast of
You know, at least there's an honesty to it. You know, like most other podcasts, they like try to pretend that they know the answers to everything.
Yeah,
Just
we're
listen.
right.
Yeah, we've got it all figured out. Listen to us. Whereas we're like, nah.
We're just gonna confuse ourselves, and we're gonna confuse you.
Join us on this journey of confusion.
Journey of confusion. And at the end, we'll always just say, we don't know, and no one will ever know.
Yeah.
So, but hey, do you know what we did? We experienced.
We did.
And that was the whole point of it.
Yeah, and we learned something. Even if we didn't get the answer, we learned through exploration.
God, we did what we were supposed to do.
Yeah.
We did what we were supposed to do.
Yeah, we organized.
We organized the podcast. We experienced. We had experienced emotions.
We generated new information.
We generated new information. Oh, mate, we did it. We did it. Join us next week for another wonderful
exploration in nothingness.
Expression nothingness. That's what this is. That should be the name of the podcast. Anyway, should we stop it there?
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Hassan. That was fun.
All right. Catch you later. Bye.